first I want to introduce the panel, the intersection of tech, VR, AR, XR, and other technologies and theater specifically. And what really drew me to this topic was I was working on a paper for IEEE, which is an engineering nonprofit organization that publishes papers about the ethics of certain technologies. And so I joined a panel that was about specifically AI, the ethics of AI in the arts. And it was started by this guy who was curious about AI as it was coming to fruition and penetrating all these industries. And he started talking to the technologists behind it and saying, well, what is there any paper or what are you following as far as ethics go? And the closest thing people would say that they could come up with is the Isaac Asimov short story that was published in 1942 about the 3 laws of robotics. And so needless to say, that was out of date. So we're actually going to be publishing a paper, hopefully in August. We've been working on it for over a year. And I was really tasked with looking at the theater industry and how AI or these kind of technologies have penetrated it. And it was really challenging. I did not find a lot. At the time, the closest thing to tech, that was happening tech-wise on Broadway anyways, was the technology involved to build King Kong. And there was all this talk about the water in his eyes and how cool that was, but it's far removed from AI technology, or certainly VR. And actually what I found was, talking to my guest panelists actually, was that VR, there's more VR really than AI. VR is like the version of AI that's really penetrating the theater. So, and now fast forward, it's been about a year, and BAM just opened up this, I guess it's an installation called Technopolis, and I'll post that link in the chat for people if they're interested. It's about this kind of multimedia immersive technology, and it's really aimed towards kids, which I also find very interesting because I'm interested in looking at the future of theater, and that's very much what we're going to be talking about today. And these kids are growing up with these technologies, so I think we're going to see this more and more within our art form. This is just the beginning. And so the main questions I'd like to address today with the panel is it even a good thing? Like, what do we think about it? And with everybody, I want everybody to weigh in on this eventually. Where are we going? Do we want to go there? And is it a good thing? So of course we have to start with where we are now. So, and even before we go there, I think we also need to start with an introduction of what is it, right? For those of us who are not overly familiar with it. So as I'd like to introduce the panelists and start telling us a little bit about your work, what you do, and explain it for us. I think it's a lot of people in this group might be new to these technologies, so if you can break it down for us, and then we'll get to some of the more meatier questions. Let's start with Julie Saltman. Thank you for joining us, Julie. And Julie, by the way, joined very last minute, so I'm very grateful for you to be able to join us.
I would love to tell you about what I'm doing, but as far as the breakdown of how it all goes, I'm going to let DJ do that because he's the one I am working with. But I will tell you that my show is called Taking Wing. It is going to be a virtual reality show before it becomes a Broadway show. And when it moves to Broadway, it will have augmented reality, video mapping, and avatars. So once we get to the theater, it will not have phones, it will not have headsets, it will not have tablets. You will be in your seat. The actors will be on the stage, and then technology will take over when the characters fly and run through the audiences and all those kinds of things. And Taking Wing is got griffins, phoenixes, butterfly fairies. It is a takeoff on the Giving Tree. It has an anti-bullying message, and there's absolutely no he, she's, or theys in the entire script. Anybody can play any character at any time. Already, when we did it at the Duke Theater, and all of our readings or whatever else, men, women, whatever character can be, whoever and whatever. And everyone kind of loves that. It's awesome. And and I'm working with DJ, and we are 4.5 years into development. And the exciting news of the week is it looks like the project has finally got on some of the right desks. So yeah, that's the elevator pitch, but DJ can break down the difference between my virtual reality show and immersive and all of those kinds of things, because he explains it better than me.
Well, thank you. And actually, yeah, that's part of the reason why I wanted to start with you, because we're going to get, the language here is going to get more complicated, I think, as we go along here. So I think,
so virtual reality as a theater maker, as a Broadway conner, as a theater obsessed, and all the Broadway shows I've done since I was the assistant to the producer of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. My understanding is virtual reality is the headsets, and that's what we're going to start with, because the land of Emimencia belongs in a headset, and my show all takes place up in the air, so that works. But then when you have to put it on the stage and you keep your actors, ironically and awesomely, my lead is Chris Tierney, who was in Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, and he is the one that fell, and he is playing my King Maldor, and his feet will not be leaving the stage, much to his dismay. He would fly around the theater if I asked him. So that's when it becomes augmented reality, immersive reality. But for the most part, when my goblins and my hundreds of fairies fly around the room, that's video mapping. And augmented reality is the things that, I think some of you saw Broadway Bounty Hunters. They use that. They put augmented reality on the walls to create the forest. It's basically really big tablets. I'm sure we will have some of those to create our world, because when you walk into the theater, the whole world will be the land of Emimencia, and that will be through augmented reality. That's the shortest version I can give you.
Yeah, no, I think that's really helpful. Again, because with your theater background, I think that's something we can understand. So thank you. I will move to DJ next. So DJ, I met you actually through Eric, and my understanding was that you're very much entrenched in the VR world. So give us that background. But one of the things that intrigued me about our conversation was that you were convinced that VR is the future of theater. And I just never heard that before, because I was one of these people who really didn't understand it at all. So if you could give us an introduction of yourself and about the technologies that you work with and explain it for us, that'd be great.
Sure. So I'm pretty much here because I've been obsessed for a long time about VR technology. 2012, I kind of took a major shift in my life, moved away from my original profession, which was engineering and project management. Started the NYVR Meetup. So I got into the industry through being a community manager. NYVR steadily grew and grew and grew. It's still now the second largest VR meetup in the world behind Silicon Valley. Till COVID, we would hold events monthly. We're kind of on a hiatus now. And then 4 years ago, I officially took the leap away from my original profession and co-founded the Glimpse Group with a couple others. The Glimpse Group has steadily grown. We're now a team of 50, so we're one of the largest AR and VR companies around, and we focus mainly on enterprise solutions. So we don't really do gaming. We have the organization split into many different divisions, which include data visualization and healthcare, and training, corporate training, marketing and branding, and one other section, which is entertainment applications. So that's kind of how I got connected with Julie, and we're working with her as a technology partner to basically help bring VR and AR and projection mapping to the theater world.
Great. And now AR stands for augmented reality, which is really any kind of alternate reality, I suppose. And map projecting, I think is what you called it, right? Is basically.
Yeah, so I'll explain.
Yeah.
So virtual reality, here are the definitions, and the definitions everyone has different little terms that they throw around, but the main ones these days is virtual reality is when you put on a headset and you are completely transported into another world. The big problem with virtual reality up until very recently is that there were a lot of hardware that just really couldn't deliver the right type of experience. So Google Cardboard being kind of the lowest grade, and it really wouldn't be effective in tricking somebody's brain into feeling as if they're there. And most importantly, being comfortable in that virtual environment. Fortunately, now there are a couple of solutions. This one being one of the main ones. It's called an Oculus Quest. It's $400. No computer, no wires, and it's really pivotal for the industry and scalability. So that's virtual reality. Augmented reality, by definition, is basically when you are looking out into the real world and you are adding computer information on top of that world. Right now, the majority of augmented reality types of content is done with our phones, right? We hold our phone up, we use the camera to see into the world, and data is put on top of it. There is something called a wearable, which is an augmented reality headset, and that's kind of the next evolution of immersive technology. There are a handful of, I would say, more prototypey type of solutions, Microsoft HoloLens, Magic Leap, some of these names you may have heard, but they're not really consumer products quite yet. And the big next step in the evolution of augmented reality, and many people believe, will come from Apple. Apple has continually advanced, going from iPhones to AirPods and watches, and most people believe that the next thing will be glasses. When that happens, it'll be a big jump for augmented reality. And then the final piece is projection mapping, and also I would say holographic displays. It basically lumps together any other method of being able to share three-dimensional content to an audience. The one huge advantage of projection mapping is that the viewer doesn't need to do anything, right? They don't need to wear a headset. They don't need to hold a phone. Basically, a three-dimensional surface has a projection placed on it, and because it's a projection, it can be animated.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that's really helpful. And I know Eric is also can maybe even add to that. So let's move to Eric now. Eric, you have a really interesting background, a lot of theater and film and even writing, and also you have created a new kind of version of what you call XR. So if you can, in a nutshell, I mean, I tried to edit your bio and found it very challenging because you've done so many interesting different things, all of which are relevant to this conversation. So, and I kind of wanted to end with you because I think as far as introductions go, because I think it is in some ways the most complicated. So can you kind of break us down what your work has been and is? Oops, I think you're muted. There you go.
Actually really simple. It's also simpler if I'm not muted. When I'm muted, it's really, really hard to understand.
Yes, right.
Well, I'm a professional eclecticist. I'm interested in a lot of different things. With respect to what we're discussing, I was a backer of the original Rift Kickstarter, which started the second wave of virtual reality. There was a wave in the 90s where they used such huge materials over people's heads that they called it Damocles' sword, hanging there over somebody's head in order to use it. The idea of virtual reality has been around for a long time. It's really the professional airline flight simulators, for example, are incredibly complicated, and they put you in an environment where you are simulating the flying of a plane. It's really the same thing, but it's not a consumer product. What's happening is that well, let me talk a little bit more about myself. I started a film magazine. I created the American Film Magazine, later selling it to the American Film Institute. I've always been interested in interviewing and meeting people. Interviewing many of the directors is mostly how I learned about film. I figured, why go to people who are studied with people who've studied? I'll go to the people who are actually doing it and ask them how they did it. And it was a great way to learn about things and to have a lot of fun. I did a computer game called Millennium Auction that was won a lot of awards and very little money. I've done a lot of plays of Shakespeare mostly. I'm particularly interested in adapting the sonnets as plays, because all of those things are like many of the sonnets are like tiny little speeches, and they're really several different characters that wave through the different sonnets, and they're very interesting things that you can do with that. My original background was in college was both English and physics, and I went on to get a PhD in physics. I did a lot of work. I was a member of the Institute for Advanced Study. I wrote a book about neutrino astrophysics. I did a lot of computer graphic video visualization at the very early days of computing. And I worked on Wall Street and a lot of other things. I'll skip all those. So,
yeah, so how did that bridge into, yeah, XR?
So all of those things contribute to XR. I realized, as DJ was saying, that there's a lot of confusion in the names. What is virtual reality? What is mixed reality? What is augmented reality? And they're really all the same sort of thing, just with slightly different technology, slightly different applications. And I said to myself, instead of arguing about this, let's call them all extended reality, because what they all do, and this is the fundamental point, what they all do is extend our reality of the world. That facts happen. As humans, our access to the facts is only through what people tell us or what we directly experience. And what the exponentially increasing technology that we've had for the last 50, 70 years does is to expand and extend our knowledge of that reality. What content does is expand our knowledge of reality. So I call that extended reality. With a little x. You can substitute an A, a B, or an M for augmented, virtual, or mixed reality. So it's very convenient. And a lot of people have started using the term extended reality and using XR to apply to this whole field. Now, the whole field is very broad because it's not just headsets like this. This is the Quest headset.
Not to be confused with the Oculus, even though it looks almost identical.
Made by Oculus, it is their newest version of the headset, the one that's promoting most now. And all of them all the different headsets look more or less alike. If you're doing virtual reality, because the solid thing in front of you blocks out the rest of the world. Here you have earphones, you can hear things, and you get a completely created version of the world. That's virtual reality. If this were transparent, I went upstairs just a minute ago to try to find my HoloLens. You have a plastic and you can see the real world at the same time that you're using the headset. So right now, from the point of view of content, I think we're in one of the most exciting periods that we've had in maybe 50, 75 years. The issues of truth, equality, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, which we've been discussing for 250 years since this Declaration of Independence, are more important now than ever. Every one of them is a critical issue right now. So from the point of content and issues, this is a fantastic time to develop theater. Not theaters. Theaters are in trouble for the next, till we get a good vaccine and good treatment. But theater, separate from theaters, has vibrant opportunity, both in terms of what we need in terms of content, excitement, and what we need. And it's fantastic because of technology. While these issues have been around for 250 years, technology is doubling every year or 2 years. What's interesting about this headset is that in 2012, the modern era started with a Kickstarter by Palmer Luckey. 4 years later, they produced the first headset, which had 1 million pixels available per eye. The latest headsets have 8 million pixels available per eye. It's doubled it's doubled, and it's doubled again from 1 to 2 to 2 to 4 to 4 to 8. What's exciting about an exponentially growing field is that it doesn't grow linearly, it doesn't stay the same, it grows exponentially. It doubles in a certain period, and almost every feature of extended reality is growing exponentially. It includes not just the headset and things that you can see, it includes cameras. For example, if you're going to make pictures of things, this is the Bway's camera. It's three-dimensional. It has 2 lenses. This is the Bway's 360 camera. This takes pictures.
Can you move it in front of your face so we can see it? Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Takes pictures, well, it's really held this way. Takes pictures 360 around this way, 180 up and down, so you get the full sphere around the camera. And when somebody is using a camera and making a virtual reality video like this, it is as if the person is where the camera is.
Mm-hmm.
So the person
it might help, Eric, if you turn off your virtual background. I think we'll be able to see the equipment a little bit easier.
I don't think so.
If you can't, then it's just make sure you hold it in front of your face. And I know you're showing us a lot of the instruments.
Yeah.
Go ahead. It's fine. If it's too complicated. Yeah, there we go.
So this is a camera which has 8 lenses, and each one is a wide angle lens, so that between the 8 of them, it takes the entire 360 sphere around you. And they're also like this, so it takes the 180 above and below. So in other words, the entire sphere around the camera is being captured. So we have the things like the headsets, which show you information, cameras which take information, but the exponential growth of technology is also increasing things like artificial intelligence that you were working on, which is responsible for speech recognition, simulated speech, creating avatars that are human lifelike. You have 5G, the networking technology that is making a lot of things possible. Everybody who's used Zoom knows what the challenges are, especially for music, to be able to get good reception, good broadcasting from the person to the to the screen, from the screen back to the person. 5G, the next iteration of networking technology, is going to improve that. It's going to improve the latency of that so that you can put 2 people in different places and have them collaborate at the same time. There are a lot of, the fact that technology is increasing exponentially gives tremendous opportunities for the wide range of things that are going on in theater. So let me stop there.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there's a lot of tech in there that I think people are still, and I am noticing comments in the chat too. I think people are still trying to figure out how to get there. So let's take a little bit of a step back and talk about really where we're at right now, the intersection where we're at right now, because I think a lot of the equipment and a lot of the stuff you're talking about is where we're going, and it's the tools and it's the possibility. But let's talk for a second about really what is happening now and how this translates. So somebody said, can this be done in a theater? So let's, and actually maybe I'll ask Julie to answer some of this. How do people experience VR if they're not in a theater? And if you can actually kind of talk about it both from the production side and from the audience side, I think that'll be helpful.
Yes. Yeah, I've been asked this a lot. There are ways to have virtual reality headsets where you have 10 people in a room and you can all see each other and have a group experience. That's one way to experience it in a theater. The other way to experience it is to have a headset at home and be able to watch whatever is downloaded and all of those kinds of things. So yes, you can have a group experience in the virtual reality thing. Now, do I DJ and I disagree on this, but do I believe virtual reality headsets are going to be in a Broadway theater? I say no. I say never, because that's not what that experience is about, and that's not what you're paying for. And call a spade, let's be completely honest, you're always going to have someone who's going to say my headset didn't work, and they're going to want their money back. I mean, come on, we're all producers here. But I also do understand that people don't want virtual reality headsets to watch something like Tennessee Williams, or to watch something that you would see as a movie. Whereas my show, The Land of Emileena, is in a virtual world and is supposed to be in a virtual world. I don't need virtual reality as a wow factor. I need it because it tells my story. And that's the difference between what theater makers are using as a wow factor and what they're using to actually tell the story. Definitely the shows that are using video mapping, whatever, it's wow. Does it go with the story or the content? There's been a lot of debate about West Side Story and those kinds of things that are using those kinds of things. But it is lots of fun to have 10 of you. I think 10 is the max, that the 10 of us all put on the virtual reality headsets and could see each other and we could have the group experience. But as far as 1,800 people doing that, I don't believe that day is coming. But everything else that, you know, Eric and DJ were saying, AR, you know, video mapping, XR, all of that is on its way to Broadway, absolutely.
Well, I agree with all of the things that you said, except I'd like to make the point that all of these things are opportunities. What you're doing is extremely important. The trouble with, one of the problems with virtual reality now is that there are no good stories. People are still experimenting. So the best things are still experiments using the current technology. Now, but the one exception that I want to make is that there has been virtual reality on Broadway, or at least let's call it mixed reality on Broadway.
Yes, absolutely.
Because there was Encounters. Encounters was a fabulous Broadway show which used virtual audio to give people the audio sensation that they were experiencing what was being talked about from the stage.
Yeah, I saw it.
You really have to be in a theater, because if you had now a headset which was providing spatial audio, no matter where you were, and you used a virtual reality camera to make you feel you were in the presence of the narrator, you would have almost the same experience that you had in the theater as you did there. Now, the difference between what you're talking about and this is that did not obscure your view of the stage while you were sitting there.
Which is a huge difference to directors and producers on the Broadway stage. It's a huge leap.
Stories are the most important thing that is missing from even the current level of capacity of virtual reality. Virtual reality is still 5 years away from having the resolution and the software that makes it really, really applicable to consumers. We're in the development stage now, and it's going to take a couple of years before we get a lot of really good stuff. Maybe you'll be the first.
Which also kind of answers one of the questions in the chat, which was asking about how expensive some of this. And I think part of the problem is that it's so expensive that it's not necessarily accessible for everybody yet. But I'd love to let DJ kind of weigh in here and kind of hear your perspective, knowing that it's kind of the technologist side. And one of the things in our conversation when we spoke before was that a lot of these technologies are being built by technologists who are not theater people. So they're not always thinking of that perspective. So I'd love to hear you weigh in on that, DJ. What do you think?
Sure. So first thing regarding price is we're an order magnitude better at $400 for a fully functioning VR headset now. Also, accessibility is way easier. Before, you really needed to be a hacker in order to get a gaming computer, expensive, wire it up. The new headset almost comes in like an Apple type of package. Now, that said, it's still not plug and play and you're into a VR experience yet. We still have a little ways to go. I agree with both Eric and Julie about the content that is currently in the virtual reality space. It's mainly driven on games, right? The platforms are game focused. The developers have most likely spent all of their time creating games in the past, and many virtual experiences that are being created are unnecessarily being gamified because that's the community that is driving the development. And what I kind of plead to this group is VR is a medium and it can show all different types of forms of art. And we need all different types of artists to embrace this technology, try it out, and figure out in your own ways how to tell your story in this new medium.
Yeah, well put. I don't think there's one way to do it. I think, right, it's just how you use the technology. I'm going to take a question, if that's okay with everybody. Sam Berland, do you have your hand up? You want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, last show I saw was King Kong, and they use LED walls for most of their sets. So when King Kong was running down Times Square, they gave the effect that the background's moving backwards as he's running forward, and he's running in place. Plus, when they're on a boat and it looks like it's swaying in the waves, all that is backgrounds created with LED walls to give the appearance that they're actually on the water. So it's and if you've ever seen Wicked, they do mapping, video projection mapping on their sets to create all the mechanical gears and everything like that. So I've been doing that for years, working with video backgrounds. So.
Yeah,
I actually took some of the people who are on my project to see King Kong, like the second they came to town. That was like our first stop. Ryan came with me, DJ, to see King Kong. I mean, that's like, okay, we're all gonna go see King Kong, so you're gonna see how all of these things can be used. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what my show is gonna be like 3 steps up from that.
Cool. Yeah, I underestimated King Kong. So Julie, really, tell us about how you came to partner with DJ, how you found DJ. Were you inspired by King Kong and then went there, or what did that process look like?
Actually 10 years ago, when I was sitting in the office of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, and I think Mary Davis is really gonna love this story. Okay, so I was the assistant to the producer who got an invitation to go to a VR AR conference, and he was in London working on Ghost the Musical. So guess what I did? I took his invitation and went to a VRA, and all I thought was, hey guys, straight guys in suits, I'm gonna have a blast, right? That was like as far, I didn't even know what VR and AR were. I just knew it was some sort of technology. And there were lots of people there that were also TV and film, whatever, so so that's where my journey began in this world. And then 4.5 years ago, when my journey started with Taking Wing, it went through puppets, and then it kept evolving. And Ryan Wang, who I met once upon a time back at that VR AR, said, you have to call DJ. So I actually met Ryan 10 years ago, a year and a half ago, DJ?
About that.
Hooked us up and said, no, this is you are ready, you need this. Once I did the show at the Duke Theater, they were like, okay, now you have the show, you have the fiber optic wings, now you need DJ. So that's how we connected.
What drew you to the idea of wanting to do a VR show?
Originally it was just a festival show in the Newark Theater Festival, and it was a 20-minute show with puppets and griffins and fairies, and that was that. But as the show grew, every single character had wings, and it was obvious that it was going to have to be a special effect thing. And then so we started talking about, oh, we could just do projections, or we could just do this. And then when VR came up, the fact that all of the land of Emimencia, yes, that's what it's called, is in the air because almost every character has wings. It's like, well, that world is a virtual world. It is a magical world. So the first place that it belongs is in virtual reality. And of course, my production designer is dying of how we're going to like actually make it, real again. But that's so virtual reality for my show is actually one of the things that's going to make it 10 times even more magical, because the caves and the wings are all up in the air, and you're going to be up in the air with all of the characters.
Got it. Very cool. So it's content.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Content.
cool. DJ, do you know of any, you said, one of your departments is really about entertainment. And so have you seen any other kind of models than what Julie's doing? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so one of the products that we have, it basically brings live broadcast into a virtual environment, and that virtual environment is a multi-user environment. So picture you're essentially in a virtual chat room. So I can sit down next to my sister who's in Colorado, and in front of us is a live broadcast. And that broadcast, we're currently using it actually in the education system, with teachers being able to lecture to a class of students that are remote. But we're heavily having discussions with people in the entertainment industry, music, comedians, actually even churches, worship entities, to basically bring people together virtually. And the performer basically has a window or a monitor that looks into the virtual world and can speak to all of the folks that are in that virtual world. So that platform, it's called Project Chimera. I'll actually put a link at the end so everyone can take a look at it. It has a ton of different use cases, and especially in the entertainment sector, I'm really excited to see it take off.
And who did you collaborate for that event? Because somebody asked if it was a collaboration between the scenic designer and you. And I am curious who is originating these projects. So in Julie's case, she's a producer, or actually a designer. Who was it in that case?
So this is actually a product that our company has developed. So we've created the technology. We've gotten traction in the education space, but we're in deep talks with different entities on the entertainment side. So it's kind of sitting there in development, and we're just reaching out and excited to bring different types of content in that platform.
Cool. So it's almost like technologists as producers. It's like a new kind of producer, which actually kind of brings me to something I wanted to touch on here, which is a little bit of the ethics involved with these processes. So I know there was a theater producer I was talking about who was interested in doing something with VR, and he said, "Oh, I can get all the actors to do it for free because it's a one-time thing, and once we have it recorded," and I was like, "Ooh, that's a very slippery slope." So yeah, I guess Julie.
Yeah, thank you for letting me say that out loud, because I've taken a lot of slack about this lately. As long as my show is VR, I will be going through SAG-AFTRA, because they will be filmed on green screen and filmed in any other way possible. So as far as I'm concerned, as long as we're in virtual reality, it's no different than, it's just a different medium of film. And I will be following all the rules, and my actors are not just equity, they are SAG-AFTRA, so I'm okay. And then, when we go back to theater and theaters start opening again, we'll talk about equity. But the only thing that, once they weren't paid just because we didn't do a Zoom reading for people to hear. We were just trying to have creative content amongst ourselves, which is very different. If I had been doing a Zoom reading where I was inviting people to listen, or possible other producers or whatever else, yes, I would have paid them. That's different. But as far as using people free for VR, that is very sketchy. I mean, I know you can do whatever you want with non-union people, but I have Broadway people, so it would never occur to me not to.
Great, yeah. And Eric, I'd love to bring you in as well. I think, but I also just want to make the point that as we are forging this new territory and creating these new models and kind of partnering with technologists, which is not something we've done traditionally in the theater, is that it really is our responsibility as producers or these creators to make sure that all levels are kind of fairly represented. So thank you. And now, Eric, what has been your experience as far as that goes?
A lot of what's being done is not commercial, it's experimental. And we're in a totally new medium. And the experience has always been that when you have a new medium, when television started, when movies started, When television started, movie actors didn't want to do television. When television started, when movies started, nobody knew what it was. Theater actors thought it was something to be poo-pooed. When you have a new medium, you're going to have new actors. When you have new actors, you're going to have actors that don't have union cards. It is not that they don't have union cards, but in fact, right now the union is in
Turmoil.
obstacle to what is going on, because they don't really have clear, good, fair rules that even allow people to do what they would like to do or what they're doing themselves. So I think this is going to be a big opportunity for new talent, and it's a challenge for the unions to find a way that they can do two things that are absolutely essential. One is to prevent people from being abused, which is something that frequently happens and has happened even to union actors by exuberant producers and exuberant directors. So unions have a very, very valuable place to play, but it's also very important that we take advantage of the fact that new actors are going to be very important in this new medium.
Yeah, cool. I definitely want to open the floor for questions. So if anyone has a question, please raise your hand. There's a lot of chat in the chat, which is good. There's one question in here from Elizabeth Appel who says, can small theater / small shows afford to use technologies? And I'd love to even broaden that and say, how can kind of more indie, smaller producers get involved in this art form? Is there a cheaper level, I guess, as an entry level? And that's open to anybody can answer that.
If you do something careful, you don't have to spend very much money at all. If your story is really, really good, you don't have to do, you can make something work. The equipment that I was showing is, yeah, you could do it for $1,000, $2,000. You could create something very interesting.
I think on the VR side, the trick is the distribution. So how do you get the people at home to have the headsets? Because right now, your audiences typically would not have those headsets. And then how do you also monetize it? And there's no great solution for that yet. This headset, there's probably about 1 million headsets out in the world. And the kids that have them are kids, and they're playing games on them. They're not looking to watch a theater show.
But I mean, beyond the headsets, when I did my show at the Duke, and we were hoping to bring in the AR and that kind of stuff. What you have to think about is that it's about what your show needs. Does it, especially at an indie level, because I have done 26 indie level shows. So I am feeling all your pain. I have been there, and I will be there many times again, I'm sure, over the years. What it comes down to is the priorities of what is telling your story. If it's more of a priority to have the AR or whatever else, there are things that you can do. There are companies. I'm not saying anyone's getting anything for free. Please don't misinterpret me. But there have been companies over the years that have said to me that if I get them program credit, if I work with them, if they sell things at the door, there are things that can be worked out. But you really have to know that right now is something that's going to be part of your show and not just a wow factor. Because in those cases, everybody has to play and everybody has to win. It's no different. Like if you're selling cupcakes and everybody's a diabetic, your cupcake salesmen, they're going to come after you. I mean, I hate to say that's kind of on point, but it is. But yes, it is possible for the indies and for festivals to have this kind of thing. Anything is possible when you pursue it. You don't get to make one phone call. You don't get just to say, oh, well, it's too expensive. It's like anything else in theater. It's perseverance. It's follow-up, it's perseverance, and it's who you know. It's your network, and it's your networking. You always, if you are networking, you always know somebody who wants some free tickets or wants a VIP pass, and everything all the way down. And I know you're all shaking your head because you've all been in these situations.
I think that right now is a very good time to finance things. Any project that you started now, which was a major project and was going to cost a couple of $1 million to create anyway in a couple of years, in a couple of years, you will be able to monetize it, probably. You cannot monetize things now with virtual reality, but as I say, it's doubling and doubling and doubling. It's going to be much more available, not just virtual reality, but all the other things that are coming in a couple of years. And now is the time to prepare what will be available in a couple of years from now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have one more question, but I just want to throw in there because anyone here who knows me knows I'm always saying there's always another way. And so we know that with these new technologies, it's part of the reason why I wanted to bring you in and to start this conversation, because we're all just learning it. I think in some ways. And so it's really about how you can make it work. And just to address, I know a concern that I've heard from some people about, the future of theater being hurt by this technology. I think, Julie, you said it perfectly, is that at the end of the day, it's all about the story. And that is the same with traditional with theater. So we're not losing the fact that we're storytellers. We're just changing the mediums. And we're not even necessarily changing, we're adding to them. So I think there'll always be that place for that. So thank you for that. We'll take one more question, and then, and because she also mentioned that networking is so important, I want to make sure I allow at least 10 minutes for these breakout rooms so that you guys can start to talk amongst yourselves. But Tita, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, but if you want to rush, it might be too complicated. The Primera project that was mentioned, I think Eric mentioned it. You said that the performer can see virtual reality, and I think you said the performer can therefore see the audience, and I was wondering if there's a way the audience can go into a virtual reality even on something like Zoom, like that you can, but it's probably too complicated on the Primera project.
What do you guys think? Do you have a quick answer for that, anyone?
It was Eric's.
Oh, Eric?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean. There are a lot of things that you can do in principle. There are a lot of things that you cannot do right now off the shelf. I think that what you're talking about, when you're talking about interaction between the performers and the audience, this is something which, because in virtual reality and the other variations of extended reality are all digital, is something that is very natural to create for them. Let me mention two other things I want to mention. One is, one of the best examples now of theater in virtual reality is something you can see on your Quest or on some other devices. It's a show called The Under Presents The Tempest. And, it is a masked show in which avatars take the audience around. The audience can interact with the actors that are creating it. Virtual reality theater is essentially, as someone mentioned much earlier, very closely connected to immersive theater and location-specific theater, because the essence of virtual reality is it makes it feel as if the person who is watching is right there in the scene, and they can interact with the characters that are there. Not necessarily as live characters yet, but certainly as avatars. The second thing I want to mention is that it's not only the creation of the shows that this is all influencing, but it will influence the way that shows are built, the way that shows are promoted, the way that shows are distributed, and the various aspects of extended reality and of the new technology is going to affect theater in many, many profound ways, not just the interaction of actors and the show that's going on.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being a part of this panel. Like I said, I think it's a really important conversation. So I encourage everybody to continue the conversations. DJ, Julie, and Eric, again, thank you so much for being a part of this.
I'd like to mention that I put a page on the web. The link is higher up on the chat, which is going to be a collection of support resource information about things about virtual reality, including books to read and websites to go to and virtual reality chat rooms and all kinds of things, one after another, and sources that have news. And that's going to be a nice resource on the web of things to look at for people that are trying to find out what's going on now in virtual reality and extended reality.
I have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
So
Great.
earlier we were talking about augmented reality and mapping projected scenery as a way of expanding the scenographic experience, but you still have audiences sitting in their seats looking in a conventional manner at a conventional environment, whether it's a 360 environment or a 180 environment, as opposed to something that Eric said in passing about being an avatar, having an experience where an avatar-like character can walk through the environment in your place and you can be there with the show. I'm wondering, Julie, when you said something about the creatures flying and the audiences will be there with them, were you referring to a more conventionally expanded scenographic experience, or were you referring to an avatar situation? And what's the difference in the technologies we're going to need to be able to experience theater that way versus conventionally?
Oh no, yes and yes. It will require both, because when you walk into the theater, you will be in the land of Emimencia, and then the avatars will be flying around. So it's both.
But are you, when you say you can be in the land of Emimencia just looking and there's a hologram, but you're here, or you're wearing a headset and you're next to them flying?
No, once my show, not talking about anybody else's experience, once my show goes into a theater, there will be no headsets.
Okay. So
Everybody
they'll be looking, but when you say they're up there, they're not really flying with them in their mind's eye, or are they?
In the theater, it's projection mapping.
Yeah, okay.
The content in the theater is going to be very different than the VR content. I mean, the script and everything is the same, but how that content is created will be essentially different.
One other quick question. You guys as producers, we're talking about all these possibilities that may require a certain amount of gear being owned or used by the participant. How are we looking at this affecting the economics of producing these shows? Are they going to be so expensive that they will be an elite ticket?
So I think the method of distribution and access to hardware, it really hasn't been figured out yet. But I view that VR is just a way to expand an audience. So now, instead of just being able to show that show to the folks that happen to be visiting New York City and Broadway, now the folks anywhere in the world can put on this headset and be transported to that space. And this headset, you know, when you look at the size and scale of it, it can be shipped to somebody for $20 or whatever it is, right? $30. And at that point, if you compare that to what a Broadway ticket price shows, there's enough margin there that I think there's a viable business there. But we have to get through a bunch of steps in order to get there.
But once you get to the theater, once you get into the theater, and everyone wants to talk about how expensive this is going to be, but I do want the producers out there to know that you're also saving in a lot of different places. Things that you do in video mapping and augmented reality can be figured out before you ever get in a theater. So yes, you are building some platforms and so, but those things are being projected on too. So things that we have to kind of figure out and spend a lot of money on, and pluses and minuses, can all be done before you step day one into a theater. And all of those things can change just in a computer, as opposed to repainting an entire set and rebuilding an entire ... So as far as not being able to afford it, I think that's not necessarily true. I think you're going to spend the money. It's just, how are you going to spend it? Are you going to spend it in the way to create the land of Emimencia and technology, or are you going to build it the way you build King Kong or Wicked or something like that? So I think it's going to be, I know it's going to be comparable, because I've been staring at these numbers for 18 months now. So
I'd be curious. I wanted to ask a question from a writer's point of view, and if someone is going to tell a story, what is good to know about what the technology can do, and what in order to write it with it being done that way in mind? Or do people write a story the way they would, and then a director imagines it using that vehicle.
Please
In other words,
write the story the way you would. Please write the story the way you would. Please, because once your story becomes a hit and we do it in all the technology, you want it done off Broadway. You want the high school kids to do it. You still want that story told. So no matter what, tell your story.
I love that answer. That's really fascinating. Thank you.
I'd like to know, how can I'm trying to think, while we're still in this mode of pandemic and theaters are closed and everything, how, if at all, could I utilize this new technology for, say, a Zoom reading or a presentation? Or,
well, there's a fundamental difference between Zoom, which is flat, and virtual reality, which is 3D and spatial. You can do things that are both, so that it's available in Zoom and it's available 3D spatially. And if you want to do something that's specialized for 3D, you can do that too. One thing that I'd like to say about creating stories is that the essence of virtual reality is that you're in a spatial 3D space and you have the whole 3D around you and you are as if you are there. The way to create stories for this is to create things in which you have a whole Bible of a world that you're creating. When you understand the complete world that you're creating, then you can look at the various options and the various things that you can do with all this new dimension and add that to your story if it's appropriate, or forget about it if it's not, or use both of them if you can do that too.
That's very interesting. Wonderful. I also had another question about, is it important to conceive where an audience member would be in relation to the space-time in this? In other words, should you think of the audience behind a fourth wall the way one would in theater, or does it matter if you think about it because that's something the director would do later, or should you be able to think that perhaps an audience member is above a cloud or looking in a window, or so? I don't know if it's even makes sense to ask the question, but it was perplexing me, so I thought I would ask.
I can kind of answer it. I think you're going to have a core story, and then there's going to be an adaptation into whichever medium you go into. And all of those, the options that you stated are all possible especially within a VR environment, and people are experimenting with all of it. So I think you have to focus on the core story. And then once you have the core story, then you can dive deeper into the adaptation of how that story gets told in this new medium. And what I tell everyone is, if you're interested in this medium, go buy the freaking headset for $400, because you're not going to understand it unless you put your head in there and really start to learn about the medium.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
And
Again,
DJ,
everyone.
you mentioned that you have a studio environment you're creating that will be a 3D capable studio, so that you could film actors who could then be interacted with in a 3D environment. If I have a headset and I'm an avatar and I can walk around those actors.
Yeah, we have that already up and running, and we're using it in several different situations.
Did I describe that correctly in the scenario there?
Yeah, there's a link that I posted, a YouTube link that actually explains it a lot better. It's really tough, especially if you haven't spent time in VR. So, so the link is there, my email's there, and I'm happy to jump on a future call with anybody.
Thank you.
Has anybody did anybody see Frozen on Broadway? Because that was the last thing I saw. Now, is that using virtual reality where the scenery, the frost, the scenery becomes filled with snow and icicles and stuff like in a second? And has anybody seen that? No.
That was much more closer to video mapping, but that was projections. I guess that's called projection mapping, and it's very similar to what they used in Ghost the Musical when they did the ghosts. If you saw Ghost back in the day, it was actually the same equipment that did a very different effect.
So it's called projection mapping. This wasn't. Yeah, it was projections
onto a set. It wasn't video mapping like we're doing now, but it was projections onto those kinds of things. So that's an equipment difference, not necessarily a technology difference.
And what about, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and you know, the only reason I see this like the Christmas Spectacular or something is because my son-in-law was playing in it. But it's not what I call theater in the same realm as some of us are doing. But, you know, they give you some 3D glasses, and at a certain point, Santa Claus tells you to put them on, and all of a sudden you see the sleigh going through the air with all the reindeer and everything. You know, it's like, how is that different? Was that the same thing?
Well, that sounds like it was a 3D movie. All of these technologies are just creations of the fact that technology is improving so fast in every aspect. And virtual reality is just one aspect of these things. It's not different. It's just one of the many, many new things you can do as technology continues to improve. What you described sounds like a 3D picture, but sort of a flat 3D, is a 3D picture in a frame, as opposed like a 3D movie, as opposed to something which is 3D and all around you. But they're all applications of new technology, more and more.
Did anybody see Anastasia?
I'm sorry to cut you all off. It is 6:30. I need to close the room. But please, you know, I hope you exchange information. We'll get the chat out to everyone. I know DJ put his contact, or some of the speakers put their contact information in there. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
All the audience too. This was interactive. That's part of the new technology.
Sure, we'll send a poll out. Okay, bye.
Bye, dear. Bye, Emileena.
Bye.